The Finance and Human Resources meeting is called to order on Wednesday, October 30th, 2019 at 6 o'clock p.m. Would you call the roll, please?
Alderperson Kastner.
Present.
Alderperson Bailey.
Present.
Alderperson Sarian.
Present, thank you. Item 2, approval of the October 9th, 2019 Finance and Human Resources Committee minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 3, discussion and decision to consider amending the contract between the city and John's Disposal regarding the annual rate increase. Mr. Katz.
Okay, so in your packet, there is a sheet that was provided by John's Disposal that shows some other communities that they serve, the type of services they give each community, and also the rates. So you can't necessarily compare every community to each other and to Greenfield, but this gives you a pretty good idea. Also on the committee sheet, I do mention in there that if the one option or an idea, or that if we raise their rate by the contract amount, but wanted to consider a surge charge, because I know some communities have done a surcharge. The surcharge for a year would be $20.81, and the thing about doing a surcharge, it would still stay with the rate increase by the contract, and it wouldn't compound to have a large increase this year, and that would maybe protect us if the rates for recycles go back up again.
The sum and substance of the issue that's before us right now is that, right or wrong, there are tariffs with China, and recyclables aren't being purchased like they were. Most of the garbage disposal models for being funded were based on getting higher reimbursement rates through the sale of recycled material, basically metals and plastics, and to some extent cardboard and paper. But glass is basically sand, but so we're in this position where we have 2 years of a contract left, a contract that was based on a recycling model that I think everyone has been following up until the tariffs hit and things weren't being purchased, which caused the price of recyclables that you could get to drop dramatically. Is that a fair statement?
That's correct.
And this is my perspective, so I mean, I know this is open for discussion, and there's a whole bunch of different paths that we can go down. For purposes of my history and the 15 or 20 years, being an alderperson and then being a mayor, we've had Waste Management, we've had Onyx, we've had Veolia, right? And they all tended to be purchased by someone else to make them a bigger company, if that makes sense. When we went out for bid the very last time, and I think Veolia was our previous provider, which had purchased Onyx, which I thought had purchased some of the contracts for, was it Waste Management?
Superior,
that's it. John's came along because it was offering service, I think, in our neighboring community of Franklin. Heard nothing but glowing customer satisfaction from the city of Franklin and the kind of service they delivered. We entered into a contract with you after, I think, going through the bidding process, right?
correct.
They were dramatically, for the levels of service that we get for our garbage pickup and recycling pickup, for the recycling center where people do their drop-offs, with regard to special pickups, with regard to picking up the garbage cans that we placed along the bus stops along Layton Avenue and 60th and wherever, right? The level of things that we received, in that contract from Johns far exceeded anything that we would have received from the others that bid in a very limited garbage collection environment. Another little bit of historical kind of perspective is there were typically a lot of complaints, a lot of garbage complaints from the other garbage companies that we've historically had in the city. That was, I don't know if that was because drivers turned over, or companies changed, or routes changed, or there wasn't some sort of consistency with the process of picking up garbage. I have to be honest with you, and I don't know how many complaints you folks get, but I get very few, if any, complaints that I can remember over the course of the last 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And typically, if there is a complaint, it's the result of, a driver was sick or something happened that was a little, was out of the ordinary. The level of service that we get has been exemplar. So that's one thing that I kind of want to say. The second thing I sort of want to say is that before Johns came along, the recycling center charged, I don't know if you guys remember this, it was $8 a cubic, I think it was $8 a cubic yard. So if you had and I don't know how much fits in a pickup truck, but if you, do you? 4 cubic yards, okay. So if you brought a pickup truck because you cleaned out your basement to the recycling center, it basically cost you about $25, $24. If you were cleaning out your garage and you filled up a trailer in your truck, it was 50 or it was 80. If you redid your bathroom, right, it was hundreds of dollars. The recycling center now is free to the residents of the city of Greenfield that pay for refuse collection on their tax bill. It's different for folks in apartments because they don't pay the city anything, right? They usually subcontract with their own provider. The reason that's important, I do this next door thing. Do you guys do the next door thing? The city of Milwaukee recently changed its garbage rates. And if you drop off things at a collection center, it's kind of, they're kind of doing what we used to do. And the sheer number of, not sure what you'd call it, hostile remarks to something like that is pretty significant. Moving on to another thing, and I'm sorry I'm kind of doing this in bits and pieces, but it's kind of like bits and pieces kinds of stuff that you have to kind of think about.
I get a bit when you get done.
You got a bit when we're done? I'm a little worried. I mean, Johns is a smaller company. It doesn't compete with the Veolias of the world, which is, from France or whoever the other ones are that are floating around out there, probably owned by hedge funds or accountable to stockholders somewhere, shareholders. We are probably one of your biggest clients. We have a very strong relationship with you that's, I think, is completely transparent. If there's an issue, there's someone we can call that's not in the corporate office in Paris or Chicago or somewhere else. You're incredibly responsive. So we've got that going on. The other final thing that I kind of need to point out is I'm not sure whether or not if we went out to bid today, that the prices of your multinational competitors would be anything near yours. I think they'd be substantially higher. I don't know if that's a fair statement or not, but I'm guessing that that's probably true. All of that being said, and those are all sort of good things, right? It's a great responsive company. They believe in strong customer service. We're getting a lot of services out of them that we would likely pay a lot more for with someone else or not get them at all. and all of the rest. With all that being said, we have a 2-year contract with them where the first approach is sort of like, well, we have a 2-year contract for them, they get $3. That's what, or $3.30. That's what it is. And it's not our fault that they came up with this way of, like everyone else did, you know, basing their pricing on the value of recyclables, which I think, but for tariffs, and I'm not just saying that because it's some kind of political thing. I'm saying that because it's widely accepted that the Chinese aren't purchasing these products, these recyclable products, because of the tariffs and the trade war, which, you know, most people probably don't think about when they're putting their milk jug into formerly a blue bucket, right, to be carted off. But we have a contract, okay? So, and we've talked about some of these things in closed session. We've gone into greater detail. I understand that. But the fear that I have is that if it's really going to cost them about $20 to continue to stay in business, probably, and we only have to pay them $3, and that's that. They may not be in business, and we may be driven towards a lower quality service that's more expensive, that doesn't provide the responsiveness and the kind of customer service that John's does. And that would be bad in the long term. It may be inevitable. It may be the cost of doing business. So the issue sort of before us is I am not in favor of raising rates permanently by the amount that they're requesting to stay in business. I'll tell you a little story. So I sit, I guess I'm I don't know what I am, the president or the chair of MADAC, you know, the dog catching people, Milwaukee Area Domestic Animal Control. And they buy these little aluminum tags, you know, that say that your dog has been rabies vaccinated or something, and when you register your dog, you get this little tag, right? And I don't remember the exact cost, but these things cost about $2.50 a piece, I think, maybe $3.50 a piece. And as I sign all the checks for MADAC every month, I look at one of the invoices from the company that makes those little tags that are made out of aluminum. And on that, it says that the $2.50 or $3.50 or whatever it was, it's kind of a de minimis value, right? There was a 25-cent surcharge on the bill directed or imposed because of the tariffs. And I started to get to thinking, you know, this is like, it's one of those situations where something beyond our control, right, and beyond their control, and beyond anybody's control, has caused, hopefully temporarily, the price of garbage collection to go up relatively a lot in a short period of time, which could have detrimental impact on them, but also on us.
Maybe they'll start making those little aluminum things in America, and we don't have to ship.
So maybe, you know, and that was actually my solution, that we should start melting down the cans, and maybe we can make these tags less expensively and not charge. No, that wasn't it. But
That is the reality, though, if you want to go down that road.
it to some extent, you know, I only recommend policy. You guys create it. It would make sense to me, and you know, and this is probably subject to further discussion, because to date we haven't necessarily seen financials, and we haven't had the case demonstrated to us with regard to this rate increase with the kind of specificity that I think we would all require. But I am not adverse to creating some sort of surcharge, maybe not to the extent that's requested, that is temporary, to get one of our valued suppliers through this problem. And I think I recommend that at considerable risk, because people can say, well, you know, it's capitalism, and if they go out of business, they go out of business. But I'm also hopefully going to be sitting in this chair in 2 years, and I don't want to be sitting in this chair getting the kinds of complaints that we used to get, reducing the amount of service that we get at the drop-off center, or picking up refuse at the bus stops, or having special pickups, or the rest. Because I think that those folks would be I think our constituents would be much more unhappy which is evident by the kinds of stuff that I read on Nextdoor with regard to what's happening in Milwaukee, than doing some sort of in-between thing to get through this tariff issue. So that's kind of where I'm at. First blush, the easiest answer is, hey, they got a contract, they better live up to it. When you start going to the second or third or fourth step as to what happens if they no longer exist, and the alternatives that we're faced with, I think it makes sense to more closely examine this.
On that note, in comparison to other cities and other states, and the state I probably least want to compare myself to is Illinois, but I have a family member that lives down there, and their recycling means is if you want to recycle, you're allowed to drop it off at their location. This is in a northern suburb of Chicago. That's nice. So if they're allowed to do that, then we'd have single garbage pickup, and we
Yeah.
would not be recycling things that may very well end up in garbage anyhow. And I don't know how Illinois is doing that. And I think we have grants that would require us to recycle curbside, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. Everything can go to the landfill. Then there's single stream,
Yeah.
right, garbage collection where everything is together and somebody separates it somewhere. And then there's dual stream with a single stream component with recyclables. Then there's like, well, we're only going to take cardboard and metal or something. There's all sorts of options. One of the things is that we collect about $117,000 plus or minus dollars a year from the state of Wisconsin in the form of a recycling grant that they give to us. Well, they give back to us because they've collected it in our income taxes. That ensures that we meet their standards, their public policy of recycling stuff, right? That's a fair statement. I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than that.
What is that public policy? Have we reviewed it?
Well, the public policy.
I mean, we use the money for recycling leaves. I don't want to say that out loud probably, but I just did.
Well, there are three sources of, right? I mean, there's the recycling grant, and then there's the fee that you get, right?
There's a lot that falls under recycling, including your curbside leaf collection or electronics, or there's a lot that money can go toward.
Right. So, to lose the grant because now we are not recycling in the way that we're supposed to, and I'm sorry I'm not an expert on filling out the form. It looks incredibly boring. But, if we were to give up the $117,000 or whatever it is, that because we no longer want to recycle and it's just single stream and everything goes to the landfill, then that impacts our budget with regard to leaf collection. I don't think folks realize that, or some probably do, but the leaves that are collected by Public Works, for the most part, the money that is used for our crews to collect all those leaves and take them out to the West Yard to be recycled and turned into mulch that we ultimately return to the community, those hours are paid for with that recycling grant. Those are typically not levy dollars. So if we did what you're suggesting, and hopefully my logic is following it right, it's just single stream that goes to the landfill, we probably jeopardize $117,000 from the state, and which would jeopardize leaf collection, which would really get people upset.
The biggest difference between, in regards to this, between Wisconsin and Illinois is that Illinois does not have state laws or ordinances which require them to recycle. In Wisconsin, we do. So you're a little bit bound by that. But in Illinois, even what we're finding with the crisis is, it's like, okay, it costs $2 a month or whatever it does down there to save recycling. You think Illinois is gonna let recycling go over that? I haven't seen a single city down there do away with it. So even, the similar problem down there is, it's
Yeah.
being paid for.
And if you ask most people, it's like one of those things where, there's conservatives and there's liberals and Republicans and Democrats, and they seem to be fighting over everything if you watch the news. But I've seen polling that said, are you in favor of recycling, right? And it's like one of those overwhelming kind of, yeah, we are, right? It's like 80 or 90%. There's no one that doesn't think that, generally speaking in the public, that doesn't think recycling's a good thing.
They are starting to make these little shoes I saw on TV in America out of recycled bottles. I mean, if we have more of that, I think is
Yeah.
a good thing.
Yeah. So, and then, I mean, we could talk about this stuff for hours, all the plastics that are in the ocean, strangling turtles and stuff, right? And turning them
Probably
into
ship it over
necklaces so
there.
people go out, right? Generally speaking, throwing away your garbage properly and recycling it is a good thing to do. The difficulty, I think, right now is that all this plastic and paper and metal and whatever is being stored in warehouses by a ton of people, right? Because they don't know what to do with it if they're forced to recycle it, or they're cheating and just throwing in the single cycle, single stream, because it's cheaper to destroy it, dump it, than it is to store it until the tariffs and trade relationships improve. So that's kind of where we are.
Where are we going?
Well, we probably should, I know there's a little bit of closed session there, but I mean, for all appearances of transparency with regard to this process, right? And I think it's important to explain to people what's happening. I think we probably need to come up with something in the middle that works, at least that's a temporary and short-term thing. We have to figure it out how it fits into our budget. We have to figure out whether it has anything to do with expenditures and how that works, right? We have to figure out whether, state considers a surcharge something that adversely impacts the state aids that we're receiving somewhere else. I mean, there's all of that stuff to consider, right? The legislature has not been kind to municipalities with regard to raising any revenue stream under almost on any circumstance when it comes
This
to.
isn't really a revenue stream to us, it's a straight pass-through, so would it even count?
It's essentially a surcharge, but I don't know, legally, I don't know, and I haven't looked at it, I don't know if it's considered a fine, a fee, a forfeiture, or something, or if it's truly just a surcharge and a pass-through. I don't even know if we can surcharge for it legally.
I assume since it was presented, we looked into that, but apparently not.
I did not look into surcharges. We'll have to talk to council about that.
This was fun. Next agenda?
I think we're gonna have to do that. And I don't know what the other community, because you have 2 or 3 other major customers that are, Franklin and, is it Caledonia? I forgot the third one.
You are the big
Those
three.
are the 2 big ones. So, I mean, and I think at some point we probably all, as communities, need to sit down and figure it out. The other part of this is I don't want to be the community that, well, Franklin and Caledonia aren't helping us out, so therefore, we got to get it somewhere, right? You know what I'm saying, right? That's not the situation I want to be in. As a community.
Theirs are slightly different in that the avenue that we're exploring involves service changes as well.
Yeah. That's the other solution here, right? The other solution is close the drop-off center probably, stop curbside special pickups, stop collecting the garbage cans, stop with the free and I know nothing's free, but the allocation of dumpsters, stop with all sorts of stuff, right?
If you look at the sheet that I made for you, the biggest thing on here that you have, and I'm not saying that we should get rid of it, but the biggest difference from Greenfield and any community we serve, these are all the communities we serve out of Franksville, Norway. Even out of the communities we serve in Whitewater, the single largest difference is the drop-off center. So this year we've serviced about 12,000 people have come through. A couple hundred roll-offs, lots of, several semis of electronics. So, but that represents a major cost. And it represents a major cost, yet when you look at the price column, I still think you're a very comparable rate. So the idea of getting rid of that, I think probably would be ugly, but that to me is the number one difference in terms of what we provide to Greenfield than any other community that we serve.
Yeah. And that was sort of critical back in the days of $8 a cubic yard, right? One of the things that we've tried to do, and I'm not sure how we do it, but the contractors that roll through and the residents that may not be residents, or, get the residents' key card, but they're really from Milwaukee. I think when you find that Milwaukee no longer accepts free stuff either, that we're so intertwined with the city of Milwaukee that the neighbor across the street is likely a Greenfield resident, and it's like, hey, I'll take it over there.
I think some of that stuff's always going to happen. But if you go through our drop-off center and you meet Gary and Dennis, the guys that run it for us, they do a pretty good job.
Right. Yeah, and you do.
I mean in terms of the policing,
Right.
They're not afraid to say no key tag or this is too much or.
Yeah. But as I understand it, the stuff the volume of stuff that's gone through there has increased
Yes,
pretty substantially.
yes.
What percentage of our residents actually use it? I'm guessing probably in the area of 10.
Every single
Sure, we
family.
could figure that out. Because everyone
Do you
has
have
a
an idea?
keypad.
Well, 12,000 to date, and we're servicing 9,000 something units. That's this year.
I'm not
Sorry.
asking how many per day, I'm asking how many households actually use the service. So each household is gonna be charged $20, but 80% of those people aren't using that service.
The city.
The increase isn't just based on the drop-off center, it's based on all recycling. So,
I got you, but we're
No,
just pointing
he's
to the
asking-
culprit here as the reason it's gonna go up, or part of the reason, not only the tariff, which I don't agree with. I thought the recycling was being rejected way before those came in, but I can look at the timeline on that and we can go from there, but
I did.
He's asking what is the percentage of households in Greenfield that use the drop-off center? Do we have an idea? Maybe you,
it's a small number because
Yeah, that's-
only 50% of the households have, I would say about 50% of the households possess cards. And many people don't use the drop-off center. So the drop-off center is used by a small fraction of,
so he thought maybe 10%. That was his guess.
just a
we
guess.
could actually look at our system and figure it out because now we have the cards, we scan it, so.
That's
Yeah.
right.
I think we need to do that. So if there's 9,000 households and there's 12,000 visits, and only 900 are using it, that means roughly 9 households are using it every month. 900 households are using it every month, roughly, right?
Well, and that 12,000 number plus or minus, that's individual visits. So that's not even
But
necessarily
if only
individual.
10% are using it, that's 900 people with 12,000 individual visits. If those numbers are right.
Well, what I'm saying.
Whatever it is, it's a lot.
What I'm saying too is, I don't know, some of those are repeat users as well, which would drive that number even lower.
Okay. All right.
I used it multiple times this year, so I guess I'm a repeat user.
So how would you feel if you had to go up there and pay 20 bucks every time you used it?
If I would've had to buy a dumpster, or just, I guess the downside of not providing the service, people just leave the stuff in their yard and it makes the city look like trash.
That's sort of the issue too, right? And that was one of the biggest things in Milwaukee, that people that have that mattress or that TV,
Yeah,
they just dump it somewhere.
But you do still have an avenue for disposal with the special pickups,
with you guys, because you're a good company.
because they're included,
Two of them.
Two a year, right?
2 a year.
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent service, it
Right.
really is.
Well, my point is always like, if I were a resident in Greenfield, would I want to go to the dump, or would I want to call and say, pick it up from my yard? Say, pick it up from my yard every time. That's an opinion, you know, but so the majority of these communities that you see on here that have special pickups, I mean, monthly or several a year or whatever it is, well, none of them have drop-off centers because they just call and schedule, or it's pre-scheduled, or however it is.
I don't know.
I got nothing right now.
I mean, that's a lot to think about, honestly. I mean, eliminating the drop-off center and having more special pickups, or I don't know if there's an advantage of that. Or just having 2 special pickups and that's it. I don't know.
And I'm not trying to pitch that either. I mean, our goal is the recycling, but if there's another way to do it, we do have some communities that said, hey, we want to keep you. We'll look at limiting services or changing services, or frankly, adding services to make an increase more palatable. We've kind of seen all 3 this year. The only thing that you guys don't have that we offer is every week recycling. I don't know what that cost would be off the top of my head, but
I don't think we need that either, do we?
Actually,
We don't need, well, some people do, but.
so what was happening when I had a house was that our recycling bin was actually more full than.
You're
Garbage.
probably putting your pizza boxes in there with food in them, and
It
that
was
was
the
against the
Amazon,
law.
it was the Amazon boxes and stuff like that, that really, cardboard, we get a ton of cardboard that we never used to get.
You don't accept pizza boxes too?
Just
well,
not the
2 years ago, you should have been putting them in there. Now, probably not.
All right.
So,
Yeah, it's a problem. I understand, you know, the reason for the increase, and I understand that John's is a great company, and complaints have went way down.
way down. I mean, it was horrible.
But that's being said, I don't think I can support a increase at this time.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can look at different levels of service or continue to look at the surcharge thing.
Yeah, I'm definitely, open to trying to figure something out. So, and there are many options I think we can look at. So I think we need to do that.
Okay.
Is 20 a hard number, or where did we come up with that one?
That's our proposal.
Where'd it come from? We can talk about that later. I mean, but where does that come from?
A lot of that's the move from that positive value offset to the real number of the value today. And that's about
Strictly recyclable?
strictly recycling, yeah. And this has been the hard thing in the majority of our communities that have passed this. It's that appearance a little bit almost of greed. Okay, you're coming with a 10 or a 15% increase or whatever it is. And then the hard thing for us is, well, we're going to get some of these large increases, but it's recycling only. It's not driver wages or, some of the other things that you need, cost of living, whatever it is. So that's, but we can get into that more if we need to.
Okay,
Future agenda?
I think so, yeah.
You made that motion?
Nothing.
It really needs to be a motion, but
I think we'll just continue to look at it and just,
I'll
Okay.
second his motion if he wants to make one, we put it on next month's agenda.
I don't even know if
I
next
don't
month's
think-
appropriate, because we don't know if we're gonna have information back.
well, we have to do something by November 19th, 16th, 18th, 17th. 18th, 19th, it was 19th?
19th.
We have to have some information by November 19th, so there is another finance committee meeting before then.
November 13th is the next
November.
finance.
That's the only meeting we have in November.
Right, well, we can always have other meetings. So between now and the 13th, we should probably come up with some solutions to try to figure out how to, whether it's a change in service, level of service or something.
Okay.
Okay, yes,
Yeah, because that's part of the budget.
it is, for sure.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item 4, discussion and decision to approve an ordinance amending section 3.125C of the municipal code, adding annual permit fees for small wireless facilities in the right-of-way. Mr. Katz.
Okay, I could talk a long time about this, but I'll give you the short version.
Not another fee, right?
So, no, not another fee. This is actually a fee for the wireless utilities. So, as you know, most up to now, cell phone towers were big, tall towers with multiple antennas. And now what the cell phone providers are instituting is putting up small antennas about the size of a telephone pole to fill in the gaps, and also in the future they're going to provide enhanced services. You're seeing this mostly in large metro areas right now. So these antennas, like I said, are about as tall as a power pole, or they could be attached to a power pole, they could be attached to a street light, or they could go on their own pole. There's federal and state laws that strictly benefit the cell phone providers and limit the municipalities from regulating these. But one thing that we can do as a community, we can charge a permit fee to put them up, just like we do any utility, and that we charge $100 per installation. And then this new fee that we can charge the cell phone providers, we can charge $20 per installation per year. So in other words, if they put one of these small cell antennas up, we get $20 per year every year, as long as it's there. And Verizon is planning to put about 100 of these up in Greenfield. So we're carefully working with them and following the state and federal laws to make these as inconspicuous as possible. We're trying to put them on, we're having Verizon put them on decorative poles. We're making sure the location is in an area that it blends in.
To the extent we can,
To the
right?
as best we can, yeah. And Milwaukee is probably the first community around here that's gotten them, because they're trying to prep for the convention, Democratic convention. Greenfield is another one of the first. They came to us first. We've been very, very strict with them, and they've been pretty compliant. Verizon, so they've been good to work with so far. They haven't put any up yet, but we're working with them. We just got a call 2 weeks ago that AT&T is now looking at Greenfield for this, because each company has their own system. They don't share.
So the most we can charge is $20.
But with the-
Yeah, so basically the feds have preempted us, and whatever the feds didn't do, the state preempted the rest of it.
Yeah, the
So
Fed, the state,
22 So the $20 that he's talking about is the maximum that they let us charge. It doesn't even cover the kinds of costs that we incur when we're trying to find out where they go and working with them to co-locate or do whatever.
we can collect $100 per location for the initial installation, and this $20 is for,
But it doesn't cover
it's, right.
Yeah, I've almost got $100 worth of time into one location for crying out loud. I'm sure you guys are probably dying up there.
They have good lobbyists.
They have good lobbyists. So, the danger is, I mean, we need to pass in order to collect the $20, we need to pass an ordinance. So, we need to pass this ordinance. This has no direct impact on.
Motion to approve the
our taxpayers.
recommended ordinance.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 5, discussion and decision to replace the detective sergeant position with a captain position. Set salary, recruit and hire for a captain of the Criminal Investigation Bureau in the Police Department, coinciding with the 2020 budget. Chief Johnson.
Good evening. I worked with Julie heavily on this. I appreciate all of her help. But we are at a point right now, as you look on your committee sheet, since 2012, we've had 5 different supervisors rotate through the Bureau. We are young. We are very young. Back, I think, when this was first brought on, it was to expose a detective or a sergeant to the Bureau to make them well-rounded or more rounded, and then put them back in patrol. But because we're so young, they don't even spend a year and they're rotated back. With the DNC, with the new Act 348, with the officer-involved shooting, have it be investigated by an independent agency. We are one of the 5 agencies that do those investigations, along with Milwaukee, Waukesha, West Allis, where we take our bureau and we basically plant ourselves in that, say in the city of Milwaukee, an officer-involved shooting. It's intense. There's 100+ detectives. I'm looking to change this so a detective, someone with experience in that field, is the one orchestrating, organizing the investigation. Currently, if you look at the salaries, if you look at the amount of money we spend on overtime for a detective sergeant, it's actually more than it would be for a salary position.
Any
Do we need to
questions?
discuss this? It seems pretty.
Anything?
That
Questions?
seems like a good idea. I just got one question. I know years ago, the Detective Bureau was run by a lieutenant. So somewhere along the line, somebody thought a sergeant's gonna be in charge, and that they thought that was a good idea.
It was actually run by a captain. Phil Hall was the.
Phil Hall,
yeah,
exactly. He
Phil
was
Hall was run by a
lieutenant when
captain.
Well, I was on the job. He was a lieutenant in charge of the Bureau, but that's what he did. He wasn't a patrol captain. He was a
And he was a detective promoted into the, from the Bureau into the Bureau.
from the Bureau, exactly.
Right.
So at some point in time, that went away.
It did. It did. I think my predecessor was the first detective sergeant that was made that position. I think it was to, like I said before, make them more well-rounded, maybe a little bit more marketable for promotions. But the fact of the matter is that when you're looking at expertise, especially in this day and age, I mean, this year alone, we've had a homicide. We had a major multi-state burglary ring, along with an unfortunate electrocution that just happened. The Bureau is, it is where it's at for critical incidents. You need people in there, not to say we don't have people, but to take over to manage those serious situations, for me personally, it has to be somebody that is in the investigations, knows what they're doing, search warrants, all that stuff that incorporates. Because right now, the detective sergeant, they lean heavily on the expertise of the Bureau to know how to do that stuff.
Right, it just seems to make your proposal makes sense to me in that you acquire, 90% of the job is learning on the job as far as I'm experienced, and that means so much in police work. And you can go to school all you want, but that experience that the detective gets, that person it may make a lot of sense. That person would be one of those people would be the captain of the Detective Bureau, that you wouldn't mix that. Not too many departments mix that kind of, because it is getting very, very technical.
It is, and like I said, we have wonderful people. Both sides, patrol and the Bureau. If you would have seen them work for that homicide, that burglary ring, the amount of money that they saved, the amount of time, amount of resources it was amazing how they worked together. It really was. That Bureau right now is filled with a bunch of qualified candidates.
Yeah, just from my perspective, having someone go from non-exempt to exempt is always a beautiful thing from a financial standpoint. That being said, there's only a few concerns that I had. First is that it's a captain like the other three captains. So I think that the job descriptions need to be very similar. They're almost interchangeable. And I think, and I know Julie and I have talked about that, and I had a hallway discussion, I think, with Brian about that. He was looking at it. That they are part of the command staff and they are somebody that is looked up to and is the kind of the go-to person for sure, right? I get
And
it.
that's what Detective Sergeant is treated at now. They're
Right.
part of the command staff. In the Monday morning meetings, they are already there.
But as a captain, the captain also needs to step in to maybe non-detective related CIB functions at some point. We don't have dozens and dozens of leaders in the police department. We will have 5 or 6, right? So,
Correct.
the second thing too is, you mentioned that there are a lot of capable candidates within the Detective Bureau that could go into this. So I've gone through the process over the course of time where every time there's a promotion, and it used to be like this in the fire department, pretty much, it's not as much as it was, and in the police department, that battle lines are sometimes drawn, like, I didn't get the chance, they picked that person, they picked this person, and no matter who you pick, and I don't know what the assessment process is or how that's gonna work, but it's one of those critical times that if someone feels like they didn't have a chance, or they feel that they were on the outs, or that somebody was predisposed to the position, that can create organizational problems for a very long time.
Well, fortunately, you have a chief that's in charge right now that
I'm not, so,
that has already started to address those issues that may come about. And every single person at Detective Bureau, they're on board with that promotion coming within the Bureau, and they all are 100% sure, no matter what goes in, that they're on board. I am quite
I'm not, what I'm,
I understand.
This is like generic stuff.
regarding that, just so you know.
Yeah, okay. This is just generic stuff coming from me, okay.
Correct. And right now, like I said, if you look at this current sergeants, Pete Regenfelder is retiring in January. Dave Patrick, the assistant chief, is planning on retiring in January.
You don't have to use their names.
So the bottom line is that the sergeant, the most senior sergeant at this point, doesn't even have 5 years as a patrol sergeant. 2 of them don't even have 2 years, and 1 just finished a year. So at this time, there's a need to go in this direction.
Okay. My 2 concerns is that the job descriptions don't become too specialized, right? That they remain a captain.
And Julie's been awesome. She,
So,
A captain's a captain.
Yeah, so
and
I
that
do have the
the
job-
process to fill the position, even though I understand the department is very young, is very open, and that there aren't schisms created within the department. And I have complete faith in I'm just
The
wanting
job
to know.
The
description's
job
in the packet.
description was so it came from the old captain job description, and there was only the one. And so it was updated, obviously, to the current format, and then just a few minor changes to incorporate a couple responsibilities that the captain that's going to be overseeing the CIB would be responsible for. Basically, the qualifications. So all captains, regardless of the department that they're assigned to, are going to fall under one job description. So there's
That's-
not going to, there's no
I mean,
separation.
historically, if you're a captain, the chief can assign you to head up the radios, or head up IT, or head up projects, or head up certain areas, right? They all have their certain skills. It's just important that we not get too specific with job descriptions. A captain's a captain. And it's at the discretion, I think, of the chief to assign the captain in the position that he's most competent in, right? Or has the best skill set. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at.
So, I agree with you, Mike. Does the job description actually match what Mike is saying?
It does, right.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Further discussion?
Oh, I just wanted to say that that's a good idea, in that if this captain, whoever he or she may be, is it's understood that they might have to take
Other
command of a patrol function, other captains might be on vacation, et cetera, that, that they will have to perform the functions of a regular patrol captain.
And that is outlined within the job description.
Hyper, hyper definitions can be bad. You could have a sergeant that's in charge of dogs. You could have a sergeant that's in charge of guns. You could have a sergeant that's in charge of the jail. If your description says, this is the sergeant in charge of the dogs, or this in jail, or guns, or something, right? That it reduces the flexibility among a sergeant to do all three things, if there are three separate job descriptions outlining those kinds of duties. Those are hypothetical, Jay. I know there isn't a sergeant in charge of dogs.
There is.
There is. Does it say so on this job description?
No, it's
It
just an
says he's
assignment.
a sergeant, right?
It's assignment, yeah. Just the duties assigned.
That's what I was trying to get at.
Okay, great. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Item 6, approval of schedules of disbursements in the amount of $862,489.18.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Excuse me. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 7, approval of mileage reimbursements in the amount of $837.
Motion for approval.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 8, investments and reinvestments.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 9, accept September 2019 financial statements.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 10, 2020 budget discussion.
I think the budget's pretty good to go. Unless, I haven't heard anything from anyone. If there are questions, let me know. We worked very long and hard on it. There will be some minor adjustments coming up. So state transportation aids were higher than we originally proposed. We're getting more money.
How does that hurt us?
It's not like, oh, okay, we'll just lower taxes. That's not how it works. So we're gonna be moving those with regard to the expenditure restraint, with regard to the levy, and with regard to the capital funds. There'll be some adjustments internally to make sure that all works the way it's supposed to. Health insurance, we're gonna probably be talking about that in closed session, but health insurance, I want to, this has been the most trying year, I think, for health insurance in the 20 years that I've been here. We'll be talking to you about some things in closed session with regard to where we're at with that. I feel comfortable with the budget as it's presented.
Including the ramifications of what the health insurance.
Including all of the ramifications and all of that stuff, I think that will be okay. Remember, the budget is the blueprint going into the future. We don't know exactly what's going to happen next year in any way, shape, or form. I think operationally we can adjust for any potential increases. They're absorbable, I guess, is what that means. Not even knowing precisely yet what the final number is. I think we'll be okay with that. 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't have said that. So.
Motion to go in closed session. Are we there yet?
Yes. Item 11,
That is my
committee
motion.
to go into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute section 19.851CE to consider the following. A, discussion of specific personnel problems as related to personnel matters. B, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, wages, insurance, or investing of public funds.
Okay, so I'm going to have some help here before we go into closed session.
There's
Need a motion?
Motion to go into closed session.
And I'll second the motion.
Motion. Could I have a roll call, please?
Alderperson Kastner?
Aye.
Alderperson Bailey?
Aye.
Alderperson Sarian?
Aye. Committee to go into closed session at 6:55 PM.
just one second. Okay, so
Item 12, adjourn closed session and reconvene into open session.
Motion to do so.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 13. Oh, so we are reconvening into open session
7:38, I think.
at 7:38 PM. Item 13, decision of specific personnel problems as related to personnel matters.
Motion to proceed as directed. No need to do anything on that, just no
No
action
action's
needed.
required.
No action necessary on that item. Item 14, decision of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, wages, insurance, or investing of public funds.
That's a motion to proceed as directed, with all
Se-
confidence.
Right, second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 15, other topics for future agendas.
Well, this is kind of different. It's kind of Public Works-ish, but it's also part of this year's budget. There's the stoplights for 84th and Cold Spring are being postponed till next summer for two reasons. Apparently, there was a supplier problem with regard to the poles, okay? And they're incorporating in some concrete panel replacement project that's also going to be happening in that intersection. The streetlights, so that's different from our budget, and that money will be being carried over to next year as in the capital project. It's my understanding the streetlights at 92nd and Cold Spring, the bases were poured, and those will be going in this year, assuming that the poles are there. The bases have been put in and the conduit's being put in.
That's an ugly project.
And then, yeah, it's the worst. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm really proud of our projects in the city, but that project was atrociously bad. It's a county project. The traffic signals and the bases have been poured for 92nd and Forest Home too. I just want everybody to know that this is one of the meetings before that all happens. And there's our first snow event is potentially tonight, which is just a killer financially. The way the jet stream seems to be lining up, it's being hot, cold again. Remember that? Whenever it's hot, cold, that means snow, cold, snow, cold. So we should expect an expensive winter if things stay the way they are.
Do we
Bad.
have enough salt?
Bad. And salt is roughly twice as high as it was 2 or 3 years ago.
But I know we're going to do the best we can to pick all the leaves up
Well,
before the first snow.
Yeah, the other thing,
best as we
you know, while we're talking about recycling and garbage and all that kind of stuff, the leaves are still on the trees, and it's about to snow. This will certainly generate a number of phone calls for all of you. The same trucks and the same crews have to do both things, and you can't just take all of the leaf collection stuff on and off the trucks. So we have to kind of stage some trucks for leaves, some trucks for plowing and snow removal, and try to sneak in to get the leaves. And everyone will complain that their leaves are now in their front yard again and they put them in the road and all that stuff. But there's nothing we can do about it. Absolutely nothing. We try. I know Public Works does an amazing job trying to coordinate that, but it's not easy. So I would ask for patience.
I did see this video on YouTube of some guy in a tree with a leaf blower that trying to get all the leaves out of the tree. So
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that. You could fall out of a tree, and that it's not a good idea.
Okay,
So that's it.
thank you. Item 16,
motion to adjourn.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Meeting is adjourned at 7:44.
3.
43, 7:43.